Hello and welcome to Conversation in Cleantech, the podcast that celebrates the cleantech industry and the people that power it, brought to you by Brightsmith. I'm your host, Ben Sparks, and across the podcast, I'll be interviewing leaders, innovators, forward thinkers, and entrepreneurs from around the world to explore the opportunities, challenges, and rewards of working in cleantech. From transforming transport systems to accelerating the EV revolution, in this third series, we'll be exploring the pioneering technology and cutting edge of future mobility, all of which is helping to connect us to a cleaner, greener world of tomorrow. In addition to this, we'll be offering you some tokens of wisdom to enlighten, engage, and inspire everyone to live their purpose every single day. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Happy Friday. So, listeners, we're very lucky to host Michael today. Michael currently holds two roles, one as chairman of an EV charging company, EpicCharging. Those guys and girls focus on EV fleet management and transportation electrification. Michael also holds the position of managing director of advanced mobility at a global consulting firm. Michael has a PhD in economics and an MBA from IE Business School with a focus on entrepreneurship. We were excited to talk to Michael today as he's a true thought leader in the EV space. He's a lot of you have probably even seen a lot of his content already, which is truly insightful and a great resource for anyone that's interested in how the automotive industry is navigating the transition to electrification. And Michael, is this right? I took a quick look beforehand, but you have over 3,200 subscribers. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So I've been running my YouTube channel since a couple of years now. And obviously, it's not my full-time job. It's something I do in parallel for many good reasons. But yeah, that's what I was able to achieve so far.
Yeah, well, and some of it's really cool content. I think when people look at it, you obviously see the effort that you put in behind the graphics and everything. So yeah, please take a look at Michael's YouTube channel and subscribe there as well. So hey, look, obviously I've given a bit of an introduction, but I'm sure our listeners would like to know a bit more about you. I'd love to know a bit more about your background and some of the career moves you've made.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. And thank you for your kind words about my YouTube channel. And we'll get there when, I explain a little bit better my career moves. So as you probably realized, I'm Russian. I was born and grew up in Russia and did my kind of baseline education and a PhD back in my home country. But then at some point of time, that was more than 10 years ago, I decided that actually I would want an international career. And also for some political reasons, I didn't really want to stay in Russia. And what's happening today basically tells me my choices were correct. And so probably it's better to stay away from this type of regimes these days. And you know what? I decided to go for a full-time MBA at a business school. And this business school is based in Spain. And prior to IE, I had a full-time career in telecom and telecom retail. And I was pretty successful in those roles. And many people were challenging me, why would you actually, leave that fantastic job in Moscow and move to Spain and take another role? And, it was really a big question mark for many people around me. But at that time, actually, that was 2012, Nissan just launched the first, mass-produced electric vehicle, Nissan Leaf. And the coincidence at that time was that Nissan was actually hiring from top business schools around the world, including IE Business School. I looked at that and said, okay, that's gonna change the world. I really want to be part of it. Even though like automotive industry was pretty far from me at that stage. Also for Nissan or any legacy car maker stepping into like new technology, you also need new type of skills, you need new type of people, basically fresh blood. And at that time of in 2012 I applied, and there were only 2 people hired from business schools that year, and I was among them. And I was super lucky to join Nissan. I cannot find better words to explain my wonderful career at Nissan, because I had a chance to work on all types of EV-related technology across 3 continents. My first assignment was in France, in Paris. Then I moved to Japan, to global headquarters. With my last and most exciting project at Nissan, our partnership between Nissan and Waymo on autonomous drive technology, I moved to Silicon Valley in 2018. And since then, I'm based in San Francisco Bay Area, and basically EVs has been always my core focus, and different types of technology around EVs, from car sharing, vehicle to grid, second life battery applications, ride hailing projects, and autonomous drive projects. So this is more or less the variety of projects I was covering at Nissan. And then, about 8 months ago, I joined FTI Consulting as a managing director, covering the advanced mobility or e-mobility practice. And I'm really glad that there was a really good fit for my, knowledge and expertise in the industry, and I could actually apply it and help other clients and other firms to actually accelerate transition to electric mobility. So that's in a nutshell my career in the past 10 years.
Wow. So that risk you took and that move has really sent you on a bit of a trajectory. Then really, that's I'm sure we could probably do a podcast around some of the career moves you've made. I think there's probably some the very different environments you've had to navigate there.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. But I think in this particular episode, we decided to focus more on, let's say, electric mobility, and I would be more than happy to tell my stories and share my views on it.
Definitely. So and any fun facts that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I know. I saw that question coming from you, and I was like scratching my head. What I can actually tell you that not just a fun fact, but something to learn from. And I actually found my one story, which happened to me when I was actually working on behalf of the Renault Nissan Alliance in Silicon Valley with Waymo, and obviously this project, autonomous technology, has very high visibility and was supervised directly by co-founders of Google, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. At some point of time, Waymo organized a meeting with they said it's going to be a meeting with one of our, let's say, co-founders or board members, as we didn't know exactly who's going to come. And obviously, the reason I'm telling this fun fact or like fun story, it's basically cultural differences between how traditional companies, like 100 years old companies such as Renault and Nissan, operate their business, and tech companies in Silicon Valley operated their business. And all the standards and expectations are different, but those two worlds, they need to work together at some point of time, and they started doing that. And obviously we had a group of people, a relatively small group of executives coming from France to have that meeting in Mountain View. And obviously ties and suits and all shiny shoes and all of that. We're having lunch in a shared space. It's not a dedicated meeting room or anything like that. And we are expecting someone to come over and join us. Of course, we were having lunch with the executive team of Waymo at that time. And and one guy coming, taking a seat next to me, and started asking questions in French. And I was like, okay, I do speak French, I can probably answer those. And I realized that's Sergey Brin, but he was dressed like in shorts and t-shirt, and he was like, it looks like he just finished his workout and he was on the way to something else. And he's like, yeah, let me join you. And no one on the executive team from the automotive group actually recognized him. So they kept talking to the rest of the Waymo team, and they didn't realize they had a Sergey Brin in front of them. It's like, of course I recognize him. I live in the Bay Area. And it's like, and I tried it. I tried Russian, obviously, right? And it worked. And the rest of the meeting, I was actually practically talking to Sergey in Russian in front of the rest of the team. And probably half the meeting through, the rest of the automotive group realized that it was Sergey. Probably someone whispered into their ears, like, that's the guy you need to spend some time with. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. But that was really interesting to hear directly from such a visionary guy, from the global leader of a tech company, his views on the technology, on the market. And that was really one of the moments I would probably remember. And maybe I hope it's maybe not my last meeting with Sergey and the group, but that was really interesting to see how he behaved. He was very welcoming and nice and and friendly, but the cultural thing, the cultural difference was very, very obvious.
It's interesting, isn't it? I'm sure there's other people in that room who will use that story as a fun fact as well, the time that they didn't recognize Sergey Brin. And it is interesting, isn't it, how you do now have two very, very different types of organizations, or even probably even more than two, now looking to collaborate for the greater good around electrification more generally. And yeah, integrating those two worlds is a job in itself.
Absolutely, you are absolutely right. So automotive groups used to work in silos. So that's like an empire in its own. So you are focused on your own content and stuff. You work with suppliers, with your dealers, with your customers. But suddenly, when it comes to electrification and new technology, it's digital, but it's also utilities, but it's also cities. So there are lots of new things in the mix. And if you try to stick to your legacy culture, that won't work. So every player in this mix needs to adjust slightly, not just car makers, but for instance tech companies. So maybe it's okay to come in a meeting with flip flops and with your dog, which is that's and it's definitely okay here in the Bay Area, but probably you need to manage slightly the way the way you present yourself and work with more traditional companies too, because I mean all companies need to make this effort to shorten the distance and make it work eventually.
Yeah. Similarly, I'm not sure if there's many people in shorts and flip flops walking around Detroit in some of the old school auto firms. So yeah, that's that will be interesting to see how those worlds come together. So look, we touched on it before, I think we'll be doing you a disservice if we don't talk about it. The content you put out there is phenomenal, and I know a lot of that's taken on board as your own brand and interest. So I'd just like to know quickly, kind of, where did that start from, and why has it been so important for you to share your content? As because everyone is sharing content on LinkedIn in some level, and I think you've taken it, two steps forwards. Talk to us about why that was important to you, and maybe why you were looking to drive that.
Maybe 2 3 reasons behind that. At some point of time I realized that throughout my career in automotive, specifically focused on electric mobility, I've gained so much knowledge and expertise in different areas, and I was like, no, I cannot just keep it for myself. I need to start sharing. So that was probably the starting point. But then I quickly realized there are some other advantages of making this effort. So the first one, let's talk a little bit subjectively. So every time you put together an episode on YouTube or a podcast like this, you need to invest time and bring yourself fully up to speed and go from A to Z in the topic you're covering. Even though you might have quite broad knowledge in this space, but when it comes to very specific items you want to discuss, that's a lot of work and research, and that's a lot of discipline. And I realized it's tough. I mean, when you commit to deliver one episode every week or every 2 weeks, and you do that consistently, that's a lot of work and that's a lot of discipline too. But that also keeps you absolutely up to speed on topics that are relevant to your work and to your area of expertise. So it's sort of, people, the way people learn are different. So some people can just listen podcasts, some people can attend seminars. In my case, I learn much better than when I do things with my own hands, analyze materials, rewrite, restructure, come up with my own ideas, brainstorm. I realized it's a really strong tool for me to learn. That's subjective, but there are some other things, some extensions of it too. So when I started the channel, it was mostly kind of talking heads. And then I realized that, well, I can actually invite people and I can ask them great questions. And don't do that very often, but when I do that, I'm trying to bring really interesting people, like with great careers, with great projects. And so this is how you enhance your network. You meet new people, and that's also very exciting. So it's a nice excuse. You may do some business with them, but you may not. But approaching someone in your industry, your area of expertise, just like randomly out of the blue, you can do that if you have an excuse. And in this case, I sometimes use, I will be very honest, my YouTube channel as an excuse to reach out to people. And just last week, I published a very nice episode, an interview with Alex Guberman. And he's very famous in the United States and globally. He has his own channel, E4 Electric, and he's an official ambassador of LA Auto Show, and he's a celebrity, I would say. And I realized we have some common connections, and I've never thought that I would just ping him and say, "Hey, Alex, why don't we talk?" And he was so friendly and open, and we had a very nice conversation, and it's gaining views on the channel too. But it's so good to have someone knowledgeable in front of you, talk about things you like. And especially when you're talking to people like Alex, they're obviously you're up to speed from the first moment of the interview, so it's just you don't need to go deeper and explain. So I would say these days your presence in social media is important. So and it's also part of your personal brand. And you never know where all of that gonna go. I mean, it's people change jobs, change careers, they launch their own companies. All that can happen, but having some presence and some credibility in social media in your area of expertise, I think, is becoming more and more important these days.
No, definitely. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Back to our point before about how this is there's a lot of people navigating new environments, and there's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen for electrification to take off. So, as a catalyst for that change, I think it's really important you collaborate on those kind of more authentic topics around knowledge sharing. So, no, it's awesome to see. As you alluded to earlier as well, we could talk for probably about 5 hours around EVs, or you definitely could anyway. So for this conversation, we're going to focus sort of on EV charging. If we just look at a macro level, what are some of the themes that are driving EV charging specifically in the US? And I'm thinking maybe environmental, some of the policy that's out there, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And when I was joining the automotive industry like 10 years ago, traditionally all the analysts would say, oh, there are four barriers for EV adoptions globally. And those four barriers we need to overcome, and we need to solve for that. And then we're going to be all fine. So traditionally that was the choice. 10 years ago, you could hardly find a suitable electric vehicle for yourself, be it an SUV or a passenger car or a pickup truck. These days, it's not a problem anymore. I think every impactful car maker declared it's going to electrify their lineup, so it's coming. And obviously, even today, there are like more options than you would have imagined 5 or 10 years ago. The second one was price, and that one is not solved yet, but there are some good indications. Obviously, EVs are more expensive, and we know that. That's partially because of the battery pack. That's a huge component of the vehicle cost, but the price per kilowatt hour was going down. The price of the vehicle itself hopefully was going down. But what happened in the past couple of years, because of the supply chain issues, because of all the problems with deficits of components and raw materials, unfortunately that stopped. So we don't see the cost of an electric vehicle decreasing. But what also changed in the past few months is actually the fuel prices, the gasoline prices, and they are just skyrocketing. And at FTI, we do analyze total cost of ownership, which is the key metric for fleets, obviously. So when you calculate the the cost of the ownership of the vehicle on the 5 or 10 year horizon, you obviously can see that electric vehicles have become much more attractive in all, I think, across all segments right now, mostly because of gasoline prices. I mean, it's still a sticker shock when you look at the price of an electric school bus, for instance. But when you try to do this analysis and you analyze the cost per mile and all of that, so suddenly it becomes really, really exciting. But in passenger world, this is a little bit less of a total cost of ownership. So people look at the price at the MSRP and what they need to pay up front. But the reality is, the more people we have driving EVs, the more excited they are. They spread the word about the EV world, and suddenly people start recognizing that, you just keep going. No repairs, almost no maintenance. The vehicle is always ready for you, and you don't need to go to a gas station anymore, and you don't need to pay between $70 and $100 to fill up your tank. So that suddenly becomes very attractive. And the fourth barrier was charging. And now what we are seeing right now, by 2030, Bloomberg is forecasting that in the United States, we're going to have 38 million electric vehicles on the roads. And if you try to calculate, do some math, you will realize that every single day between now and 2030, we will need to have at least 10,000 chargers delivered. 10,000 every single day to meet that target. And I can tell you, there are no doubts we're going to hit that target. So the entire industry is prepared for that mission. And we see the curve, and it's really going pretty well. So I think on average in the United States, in terms of sales, more than 5% of vehicle sales are electric these days. And if you talk about California specifically, it's close to 20% now. So it's real, it's happening. But what about charging? And I need to agree, like there will be some counter arguments that a lot of chargers will be coming standard with electric vehicles, just as a to trickle charge as a regular plug in a trunk. That's perfectly fine. And maybe in 90+% of the cases, you're gonna just charge at home. But what about freeway road trips and fleet charging? So those are substantial issues too, and we will need millions of chargers in public places, in depots to make that happen. And I think this is where we're going to have real problems, because the truth is, you need to have good locations for those chargers, good equipment, and good software. And you also need power supply, which is not always the case. And if you want a charging hub in an ideal location next to a supermarket, next to a nice coffee bar, just 1 minute away from the main road, then probably in a year or so we will run into a problem that all of those places are and parking lots are taken, or they don't have power. And this is becoming a substantial issue for charge point operators, utilities, and car makers, because this eventually will become a barrier for EV adoption if we are not able to solve for it. So now I believe on the federal level, the government has the right focus. So it's electrification. It's clear. Subsidies are available. And I'm hearing all the time this $5 billion from the federal program. So it's coming, and states will receive this money and they will start spending. But how they spend, what is the intelligence behind the spending and investment? Those are the key questions. And I think that's going to be the next challenge in the automotive industry, electrification, in the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years.
It's really interesting that we all think technology, but it could also real estate comes into it as well. It's a very complicated issue.
Absolutely, you're right. So you see, we are going in circles, because again, it's a number of various players with different mindsets and cultures need to join forces to make it work. As you said, real estate, utilities, tech companies, car makers, all of that, governments, departments of transportation, departments of energy, manufacturing facilities, all of that needs to be realigned and synchronized to be able to achieve our ambitious goals.
Sounds simple.
Exactly.
So, we're going to touch on your startup knowledge in a moment, but obviously let's stick with that consulting piece that you spoke about. So, how are consulting companies, such as the one you work for at the moment, helping corporate organizations navigate EV charging landscapes? Because I'm guessing there's so much there with regards to fleets, etc., that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm glad that, consulting firms in general, they have quite a bit of a talent and various types of skill sets that you can pull together and come up with this solution for your client. In our case, when I joined FTI, I realized FTI has a very solid data analytics team. And I chose for myself that to be part of my go-to-market strategy. And the products we are having right now is basically charging infrastructure planning. What is the best location for your charging station, and what will be the best location for your charging station in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? Sounds simple, but actually you need to work with big data, by analyzing trips, analyzing areas of interest, analyzing competition, analyzing all the census data, telecom data, electric vehicle data, playing with all of that, putting that on a map and looking into the future, running all types of forecasts. So I think this is where real estate is critical. You make these decisions once and you stick to them. So if you decide to build a charging station right here on this intersection, and without having that deep knowledge of the evolution of the mobility needs into the future, then basically you're stuck with this decision because it's so lengthy and expensive, especially when it comes to DC fast charging, upgrading your interconnection, all the cabling, all the trenching, all the very expensive hardware. You do all of that work, and if eventually you realized that the location was maybe 500 meters off, then that's practically it. It's over. And I think this is what I personally like doing at FTI, focusing on data analytics and help drive this type of decisions. And we go, all the way from mobility needs and current trips to forecasting that into the future and giving this type of tools to our clients to better decide how they can do that. But also we do lots of simulations for electric vehicles, trailers, trucks, and buses. So we run sophisticated software algorithms to build regression models based on historical data and play with different parameters to predict your state of charge over a course of your daily run, and basically decide what's the best location, what's the best what's the optimal battery pack size, and what's the type of vehicle you need to choose. So this is the type of work we do. But obviously when you work for a global consultancy firm, you have different resources to tap into. So we have experts coming directly from utilities, car makers such as I am, all types of industries, and we can put together a team to help you actually achieve your goals, like starting from business plans for manufacturing lines up to selling or buying companies, doing carve outs and things like that. So that's the beauty, accessing talent across the globe, and being able to put a team quickly together, a knowledgeable team, with real expertise. And this is what I'm really enjoying doing right now.
And let's zoom in on the startup side of the marketplace. What are some of the tailwinds and then headwinds that you sort of see that CEOs in the startup world are facing when it comes to EV charging? Because we're seeing a lot of different organizations, a lot of organizations popping up, a lot of funding coming into the space, but I'm guessing that's not without its pros and also its challenges.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely true, and I would say I don't have an executive role. I don't have a C-level role at a startup, so I'm a chairman, and that was the deal when I joined FTI Consulting. So just to draw a very clear line between my full-time job at FTI and my ability to oversee and support a growing startup in this space. But obviously, when it comes to tailwinds, a lot is happening. So Many companies with a charging expertise stepped into this business 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but there was no market back then. I mean, the market was really in the very early infancy phase, but right now the market is picking up, and which is drawing a lot of attention to the market. So obviously, all the subsidies and VC funding, all of that is available. Then the question is, what are unique features? What is so unique about your company you're bringing to the market? How you are different from the rest of the world, and why you can be successful? And part of it is technology. Obviously, you need to be creative and come up with some exciting features about your technology, but also ability to execute, ability to deliver, ability to move the needle, ability to strike important partnerships. And what's happening today, a lot of companies who are not thinking about electrification even a year ago, and you rightly said, even real estate companies, operators of parking lots, I don't know, companies building roads and tollways, all of that suddenly becomes a mobility topic, an electric mobility topic. And obviously, there are lots of companies trying to do something in this space. Who is going to be successful is a big question mark, but I think there is room for many players. There is a challenge which needs to be solved, and I think there are, the more people, the more companies, the more startups we have in this space to be able to address those challenges, the better for the society, for the industry.
And I think as we come to a close, I think probably my last two questions. The first one is around, if we talked about the collaboration between tech, utilities, and all the different area, automotive in the industry. If we were looking at specifically vehicle to grid, V2G work, what's maybe one or two of the main challenges that these utilities companies and startups are trying to solve specifically?
Oh, that's an excellent question, Ben. I mean, V2G has been a buzzword for quite a while. My first project in V2G was in 2015 in Denmark, and Denmark is an excellent case. You don't have too many utilities. You strike a deal, and you're able to deliver a very sophisticated service, which is called frequency regulation. So how the V2G looks like in the United States is a different story. I think it's mostly demand response, where you need to discharge it during peak hours. It's less sophisticated, but the problem is regulation. The problem is also the number of utilities and players you need to deal with to cover the United States, and that's just the way it is. You want to be present in Italy, you work with Enel. In Spain, you work with Iberdrola and Endesa. In France, it's probably EDF. In the UK, it's National Grid. In the United States, it's probably another 200 companies you need to deal with, and be able to convince them that this V2G is the right thing, run pilot projects, change the regulation, change the rules, and make it happen. In general, I think there are no doubts V2G is the future. It is complicated today. And there are challenges with regulation, with utilities, but also with the hardware and software. As of today, it's you don't have that many options or choices when it comes to bi-directional hardware. I mean, chargers, DC chargers, which can charge and discharge and be reliable and stable and fully integrated with a software platform, and also electric vehicles. So all of that, connecting all of those dots, will be the next challenge, but I have no doubts this will happen. It just will take some time.
And my last question, I was going to ask you in the next 3 to 5 years, what excites you the most, but that's probably too far in the future for EVs. So what's exciting you most at the moment that could happen in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, good question again. And when I was working on autonomous drive technology, so-called robotaxis, that was the big thing. And I realized that all robotaxis actually need to be electric, because robotaxis, they're running around the clock. So if you don't have a driver, you don't need to have brakes. It's just like you can probably have it up and running for 15, 18 hours per day, putting a lot of miles into these vehicles. So they must be electric. So if we want to reduce CO2 emissions, they must be electric. And what we're seeing here in California specifically, a few market leaders such as Waymo and Cruise are fully focusing on electric, which is for me the next step for true electrification. And so we saw at the end of June, Cruise launched paid driverless services in San Francisco. It's a huge milestone, and I'm carefully following them and watching what's going to happen next. But what Waymo has been doing in Arizona in the past few years was very impressive. But bringing this technology to a very complicated in terms of traffic, San Francisco is a new benchmark, is a new milestone. So if that becomes a success, that's going to be huge. I mean, that's going to change the way we move, the way we live, actually. And that's very exciting. Also, if you saw the last report from Tesla, it looks like they're really focusing on robo-taxis now. I mean, this story from Elon Musk was all over the place for the past few years, and we've heard good stories about new version of the full self-driving software, but it's not autonomous yet. But it looks like there is a secret plan, which is not a secret anymore, and maybe we're going to see robo-taxis from Tesla. So all of that is super exciting. All of that is going to be the big impact, actually. So I think it's more than just electrification. It's actually changing our lives. So if you don't need a driver, if you don't need to own a car, all of that is a very important change.
Well, that is, I think, a very exciting place to leave it. Michael, thank you very much for your time. This has been really informative. And yeah, I appreciate each of those questions can be a podcast. So hopefully we've given our listeners a good download of the exciting things that are happening in the market. And I'm looking forward to a follow-up with you soon. And everyone should check out Michael's YouTube channel, which we'll put a little link on the bottom as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben, for having me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening to Conversation in Cleantech, brought to you by Brightsmith. If you've enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe, like, and leave a review. Every time you do so, it helps others find the show. For more information around how Brightsmith can help you build a sustainable future through identifying, attracting, and retaining diverse talent, head over to brightsmithgroup.com. Join us next time for more Conversations in Cleantech.